Good evening and welcome to God Speaks. I'm your host and teacher, Markita Brooks, and I was seeking God today about what He wanted to speak on. And as we're moving toward Memorial Day, which is a holiday in the United States where we remember those who've died, who passed on. And initially, it was, about remembering those who died in military service, but we've extended it to all family members, loved ones, anyone who was near and dear to us, and just remembering them. And so on Monday, we'll be remembering as we come into this Memorial Day, a time to remember those who passed away, those who are no longer here with us. And so as we're preparing for this day and coming toward it, and I was seeking God today about what He wanted to speak on, this is the topic that He gave on mourning and loss. Now, this Saturday at 2 p.m., we'll be having service at Temple of Peace, which is 3115 Wickham Avenue in Newport News, Virginia. And we're actually doing a healing space, and we're healing from loss. That's the focus of the service, again, in preparation for Memorial Day. But as I was speaking with the Lord today, He reminded me, He said, not everybody's going to benefit from that service. Not everybody can attend that service, but it is still a topic that He really wants to address, and He wants everyone to hear His heart about mourning and loss as we experience it in this life on earth. And so it's really important that we get God's heart about it, because as humans, we often miss it. Whether we're in the world and we're unbelievers, or whether we come into the kingdom and we become believers, on both sides, we kind of miss God's heart concerning mourning and loss. And so I want to encourage you to really just sit back, relax. Don't listen to this teaching while you're rushing or going about from here or there, but really let God minister to you as we're going through mourning and loss. Position yourself that you can really be listening to Him, because I believe He's going to speak to your heart. I'm certainly going to teach, but I believe that as I'm teaching and revealing scriptures and sharing God's heart on the issue, I believe He'll really minister to you if you position yourself to receive that type of ministry. And it's really important. You may not be in a season of mourning right now, but I'm sure that you have experienced loss in some form or fashion. And when we're in this earth, we exist in linear time, meaning we can't go backwards and we can't jump forward. And so we have relationships with people, and they progress on a continuum. And then sometimes those relationships end, which could happen because of desertion or divorce. But then oftentimes those relationships end because of death. And those people, we have hope in their relationship with the Lord and His love for them. They go on to be with Him. But then we are left here in linear time in the earth without their fellowship, without that interaction with them. And if they were an integral part of our lives, or if we really cared for them, had any type of intimate fellowship with them, that loss will be felt, and it will be felt for quite some time. And so I want to speak to you about God's heart concerning loss and mourning, or mourning and loss, because a lot of times we miss where He is. But I bless God that David didn't miss it. David understood God's heart concerning our own mourning and our own loss. And we can mourn for various reasons. Usually when we think of mourning, M-O-U-R-N, we're talking about losing a loved one to death. But we can mourn various things. Like I said, a divorce, for example, is like a death. And I remember in my divorce, the Lord told me, He said, mourn for your marriage. He commanded me. He said, mourn for your marriage. And I remember at that time, we weren't going through the divorce yet. I said to the Lord, I don't feel like mourning. Why am I mourning? And I understand that. And the reason He was telling me to mourn is because He knew it was going to end in divorce. At that time, I was still in a place where I was hoping that it wouldn't end in divorce. I was hoping that there would be healing and reconciliation and restoration. But the Lord knew exactly when we had reached that point of no return. He knew that it was not going to end in reconciliation and restoration, because he can see everything. He knows all things. He was able to see what was happening on the other end when my husband and I were separated. I'm believing we're separated unto reconciliation. And so this is the way I'm thinking, this is the way I'm planning, this is the way I'm moving, in my life, that we're separated unto reconciliation. But the Lord knew what was happening on the other side, that my husband was going further and further and further away from me. This, of course, is my ex-husband, not my current husband. But what's important to note about that is that the Lord commanded me to mourn. He said to me, mourn for your marriage. And of course, like I'm telling you, I didn't do it right then because I didn't understand the need for it, because I did not think it was ending. Later on, as I'm hit abruptly with the end of my marriage, this is months later, I see why God wanted me to mourn then, because it happens. We will be forced to mourn at some point in time, whether we do it at the onset or whether we do it later on. Our souls are designed to mourn loss. And so later on, I had to go through a season of mourning. And things in life and for those around me, it would have actually been easier had I accepted that the Lord was saying it's over, it's going to end, and mourn then, as opposed to fighting it. But even that is intricately involved in loss. One of the first things we have to do when we experience loss is to accept that there has been a loss. And psychologists will tell you that that's not the first thing we try to do. The first thing that we want to do is, we go into denial. We, in our own minds, start to pretend as if we have not had a loss. The event has not happened, the person has not died. We go into denial. Or if there's a terminal illness, like if they are dying, we'll go into denial where, this is not happening. Then a lot of times there's anger after denial. Why is this happening? And just an anger that it's happening, and angry like it's somebody's fault and somebody's got to take the blame for it, and I've got to reach out and make somebody else feel the pain I'm feeling. And there's acceptance. And now when we get to that place of acceptance, this is where mourning can begin. We cannot actually begin to mourn something that we've not accepted was a loss. And it doesn't matter what type of loss it is, as I'm sharing with you. Some people may not think it's important, like loss of a pet. Some people would laugh at that, but those are people who don't have pets. People who have pets and they've been a part of their family, if their pets die, they experience real loss. Others, for example, if they go into retirement, the rest of us would think, woohoo, have a party. You're retiring now. You finished that work that you have to do. But in some fields, people are forced to retire. When they hit a certain age, whether they want to retire, whether they feel they need to retire or not, they have to retire from that field. They can no longer continue that work. And that can be a loss for someone, even for someone who chooses to retire from a career that they've done for years. When they're no longer doing that, and sometimes what we do can become a part of the way we see ourselves. It can become a part of the way we view our own identity and purpose in this earth. So to abruptly stop that can be a very real loss. So as we're going through this Bible study tonight, let God show you real losses in your life. Some of them may be deaths. Many of them may be deaths. But there may be other things that were losses that weren't exactly deaths. But meaning you had something precious, something important to you, and you no longer have that. You're no longer able to do that. So that can still be lost. And this is a big deal, that we not allow anyone to tell us what's real loss and what's not, because it will shut down what God needs to do in our souls in this process of loss. I've got to accept that I've had some type of loss, even estrangement. If a relationship is broken, the other person may still be alive, but it may be that they're no longer in a relationship with you. That's still a real loss. If that brings you to a place of pain and grieving, that's still a real loss. And so we've got to still deal with things the same way. And so tonight, we're going to start at that place of acceptance. We're not going to go through denial and anger, because again, you can't even get to mourning until you pass those, the denial and the anger. When you get to acceptance, which I was telling you about, with my divorce, I finally accepted, oh my God, this is over. And because I went through a period of, this is not supposed to be happening. This is not supposed to be happening. This is not how this is supposed to happen. This is not supposed to happen. So I wasn't accepting it. But when I realized, wow, this is real and it is happening, we are getting a divorce, I went through a serious period of mourning. And I understood why God had commanded it. And he's actually done lots of things with me over the years, taught me about mourning and loss. And so my brain understood it. Doesn't change the way my heart has to go through it. Understanding allows you to let your heart go through what it needs to go through. There even has to be shifts in our brain as well. Our thinking has to shift as well. But once we understand that mourning is not only just natural, but it's healthy and ought to occur. And then we're going to talk about what healthy mourning looks like, and how God has sort of ordained it, and where God is in the mourning process, because he is there with us when we're mourning. That's very important that we get that. As we're going through this, then you'll be able to see how God would have you mourn various losses. And remember what I said, you can experience loss in various areas of life, on various levels, in various types of relationships. It doesn't always have to be death, but death is certainly a serious one, and the one that we most readily identify with. And so let him show you, let God show you where you've experienced loss, so you can apply this revelation to those areas of your life. This shouldn't be an academic study. God wants to minister to your heart. And so we've got to actually look at areas where we really have had loss. And so, as I started to say at the beginning, David, our patriarch, father, friend, he understood God's heart concerning his own loss. And so in Psalm 56, David, he's always sharing his heart with God. He's always been honest with God about how he feels. And what's interesting is probably everybody around him didn't know this is how David felt, in all these different situations. But he always shared it with God. And sharing how we feel with God, even if we're still in the denial or the anger stage, sharing how we feel with God is essential. It's essential. And the reason it's important is because our feelings, whether we identify them or accept them or not, they are very real, and they can have physical manifestations in our body. They certainly affect our mood and the way we treat other people. And so if we're not dealing with our own emotions rightly, if we're masking them, if we're trying to suppress them, whatever we're doing, it will actually play out in other ways in our lives. And so it becomes important that we actually deal with those emotions, but we can't always share them with everybody around us. Not everybody can handle them, because other people are dealing with their own challenges too, but also because humans are just flawed. Not everybody can handle every emotion that we are experiencing. Most of the times we can't even handle all of our emotions, but God can always handle them. And he always wants us to share those emotions with him. Not because he doesn't know what we're experiencing. He can look down into our souls and see what's happening in our hearts and our minds and our will. He knows exactly what's going on. But when we confess it to him, we're letting him in. We're asking him to minister to us through it. We're asking him to be with us through it. We're being honest about where we are, and then he can start to do work. It's like going to the doctor and telling the doctor what our symptoms are. Now the doctor can do the surgery. Even if the doctor had wanted to do the surgery before, it's not until we actually make the appointment, go into the office, say what our symptoms are, and agree to the surgery, the doctor can actually do something for us, or whether it's a treatment or medication or whatever. Nothing can be done until we go and share what's going on with us. The same is true with the great physician. He doesn't just work on our bodies, he also works on our souls. Until we let him in by sharing what's going on with us, we will stay in the same condition. And the challenge is oftentimes it will get worse and worse and worse. When we don't mourn properly, our souls make monuments. And a monument is going to be a huge thing that's created and erected. It's not a marker, like we'll talk about in a minute. But a monument is huge. It's stone. It's immovable. Our souls will create monuments to the pain in our lives. And we will be stuck in that place of pain and unable to go forward in that area of our lives until that monument is brought down. And that happens when we don't mourn properly and we don't let God in and share our emotions with him. David in Psalm 56 and in all the Psalms that he wrote, he is letting God in. He is sharing with God how he feels. He's talking to him about the people that are waiting to hurt him. They want to trample him down. So he asks God for favor. He says, Most High, when I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. And so he's been honest. He said, I'm afraid. I'm this great warrior, but they're waiting to kill me everywhere. People waiting to kill me everywhere because King Saul had just sort of put it out to everyone to be on the watch for David. And they were turning him in. They were telling Saul where David was. And he was on the run for his life. And so at this point, he is crying out to God and asking God to minister to him. And he's even confessing with his mouth the way he knows that God is going to minister to him. He says, in God I trust. I have no fear. What can human power do to me? Now, what's so beautiful is because a minute ago he said he was afraid. So he said he was afraid. Then he said, what can human power do to me? Meaning he's confessing the truth to God. I'm afraid. But then he goes, I know that you are my sure foundation and nothing can hurt me because you're with me. This is what David is saying to God, that I'm putting my trust in you and human power can't hurt me. He's confessing that truth. Though he confessed the reality of his fear, now he's confessing what he knows to be true about God, that God will be with him and that no human can do anything to him apart from or around God's protection. And so now David continues on, still in Psalm 56. And this is a scripture that a lot of us know. And I'm going to read it in the NIV and in the Complete Jewish Bible because it reads a little differently in both versions. In the NIV, verse 8 of Psalm 56, it says, record my misery. List my tears on your scroll. Are they not in your record? And then that same verse in the Complete Jewish says, you have kept count of my wanderings. Store my tears in your water skin. Aren't they already recorded in your book? And other versions say, store my tears in your bottle. And so what's important about this is that David has an understanding that not only is God with him in some form or fashion, but he knows that God is intimately there. He's right beside him, so close he can catch his tears. And not only can God catch his tears, but he's recording them, as in David's pain is precious to God. Not precious in the sense that God rejoices over it, because he certainly doesn't. It's like it's touching to God. God's heart is touched because David is mourning. He's in fear. He's in pain. He's experiencing loss because he had to leave his family, his wife, to run away from Saul. So he is in this place of mourning and fear while he's running for his life. And he knows, he's like, the way I'm feeling right now, these challenges that are happening to me, you've written them, you've recorded them, they're precious to you. You don't take them lightly. And that's so important because I know that we know that he's a great big God. He can see the end from the beginning. And so a lot of times I think that we think God sees our pain as trivial, especially if we say, oh, we're crying over a pet, or we're crying over a loss of job. And, we think to ourselves, I should just be thankful. Even if there's a death of a loved one, we go, I should just be thankful that they're with God. And we feel guilty, actually, about these feelings of grief that we experience. And we think that God is afar off and he's not connected to the feelings that we're experiencing. And so this is the point of Psalm 56, that we would know that the worshiper, David, King David, the ancestor of Messiah, he knew that God was close to him. when he was in grief, when he was mourning, when he was experiencing loss. He depended upon God's closeness, and God being present in a moment with him. And this is what's so beautiful about God. He exists in eternity, but he comes to be present in a moment with us when we're experiencing loss. He's right there in that moment when we're going through what we're going through, when we're going through tragedy, when we're going through pain. He's right there in that moment. I'm going to share another testimony with you. I was recently, actually last Wednesday, which would have been a week ago today, I experienced a miscarriage. It would have been a couple of hours after the Bible study that I did. I did a Bible study in Jerusalem. A couple of hours later, I experienced a miscarriage. And I had been having problems in my body all day, so I knew something was wrong. The next day, I went to the doctor, but that night, I experienced a miscarriage. Now, for me, that is the first time I've ever experienced that. And even if it were the 100th time, life is precious to me. Babies are precious to me. Children are precious to me. And there was an excitement, a hope, because I just found out that I was pregnant. It was so new that most of you watching didn't know I was pregnant because I had just found out. It was a blessing to me and my family, and we're all excited, we're all hopeful. And then that happens. And there was a struggle. I mean, there's still even mourning happening in my soul now. Like, I'm still in mourning, but he's ministering to me. And as I struggled for a few days. Like, there was a real struggle. I accepted that this is what had occurred, but there was just the pain of loss. One, because I do believe that life begins at conception. So even as an embryo, as just a microscopic being at that point, that is still my baby. And so there was loss of that. And there was loss of all the hopes and the plans. But even more than that, there was a never having connected with this little person, never having seen this little person, never having known this little person, feeling that I was being robbed of knowing this beautiful soul, who this person would be. And so as I was talking to God about this, just really struggling, and sharing with the Lord how I was feeling robbed, and how I was grieving, and how I was mourning, and the pain in my soul, I said to him, Lord, we were all so hopeful because our families were so excited. His parents, my parents, everybody was excited. My kids were excited. And it was really exciting. And so we were all very hopeful for, what was to come. And this has been beautiful because our families do love each other, and we're like one family. It's really nice. And so when I experienced this loss, I said, God, this is so terrible for all of us, because just that quickly as we got the hope, it was snatched away a few days later. And he said, and that is what I gave you, hope. And when he said that to me, and I heard him, and I felt those words hit my spirit, and that is what I gave you, hope. It filled that hole that I had of feeling like I had not known this person, that I was robbed of meeting this person and connecting with this little person. That was a blessing to our family, because when he said to me he had given hope, I said, oh, wow, that's who she was. She's Hope. That is her name. Now I know her. I know this person. I know this baby. And only God knows. So the beauty of connecting with him is that he fills in gaps. He fills in holes. And he was able to bless me with now knowing that I have a relationship with the person I lost. And I knew, of course, that the baby was with the Lord. And we know that all souls come from the Lord. And those that are committed to him return to him. But I was at a loss because I felt robbed of this relationship. And the beauty was that he was able to speak into that there was hope in that relationship. And it blessed me so much. Am I still mourning? Yes. And I'm deliberate about it. I'm still doing the things I need to do. but I'm letting him minister to my heart and I'm being intentional. One of the most important things that we can do in our mourning is to honor the person or the experience that we have lost. So we want to remember what we loved about them, what life was like with this person, or in my case, what the hope was of what was to come. We have to remember those things and honor those things. And that honor is not for the person that's passed on to be with the Lord. That honor is not for the situation that's ended. It's not for the marriage that ended. The honor, honestly, is a blessing to us. When we honor the people that have passed on or the phases of our life that have ended, what we're doing is telling our souls that that season of our life was important. It meant something. That person in our life was important and they meant something. And because for days and days I struggled with that, because I was like, this wasn't nothing. She wasn't nothing. This baby wasn't nothing. I was only 6 weeks pregnant. It was very early. But I said, but it wasn't nothing. And so when God spoke to me, he spoke hope. It hit me as identity, as purpose, as a name that makes it not nothing. That's something. It's something worth honoring, something worth remembering, something worth sharing with you. That helps our souls, because very honestly, Ecclesiastes tells us that eternity is stored up in our hearts, meaning we are looking for purpose in everything. We're looking for reasons behind things. And while we may never know all the answers, it's important that we know that one, God is there with us. And when he spoke to me, I knew he was right there. And two, that out of all pain, out of all loss, God can bring beautiful things. He can bring purpose. Was that his intention? Is that what he wanted to do? Loss, death? Not at all. Not at all. He wishes the best things for us, but there often are other things going on that cause us to experience loss, death, divorce, desertion, other things that just rip things that were valuable and people that were valuable to us away from us. And so it becomes very important that we grab hold to him during these times, and that we share honestly how we're feeling, and that we honor who or what we lost. Again, share honesty with God while we're grabbing hold of him, and honor who or what we lost. Now, as we are honoring the person that we lost, or the part of our life that we're no longer in, and really just adding meaning to it, it also is helping us to close one chapter and open up a new one. Even that name, hope, helps me to look forward to something in the future. So for the things that you lose and the people that you lost, there was a season in your life that they were there, or this or something was occurring. And that was an important season. And as we honor that season, it actually helps us to shift, because this is where we become healthy for the next season, is that now we have to learn to live life without that person, or no longer in that situation or that relationship, because life does shift. Honoring that season of our lives and the person or whatever that we've lost in that season helps our brains to actually make the shift to the next season. Otherwise, again, remember, if we don't do that, because our souls have to grieve. If we stuff it, we'll make a monument to the previous season, the previous relationship, or to the person that we lost, and we won't move on. But if we intentionally honor those we lost, the things we lost, the seasons that are over in our lives, our brains are actually able to start to walk away and move into a new season. Because when we honor, we're saying, you're not gone from me forever. I'm holding a piece of you Not so much that I get stuck in this moment in time, but so much so that I feel like I can carry you with me into the new moment in time. And that's a big deal. That is healthy. That helps us to move on. So now we've got to look at how we do this mourning, because what we talked about is the beginning. I've accepted it, and now I hold on to God and I tell him my feelings. Then I honor the person. This is while I'm mourning. I honor the person, the season, the phase of life, and then the Lord helps me to transition. But let's look at how we mourn. And so we want to start with the Lord being with us in our mourning. And so I want you to go with me to John chapter 11. And very honestly, you don't have to read it, because you guys, you know what's in John chapter 11. This is when Yeshua raises Lazarus from the dead, which is very important, because this is the first time we get to see this intimate interaction. He actually rose other people from the dead, but the story is not as detailed as this one. Not to mention, Lazarus had been dead for 3 days. So it's a really big deal. So when Yeshua actually arrives, he's been in the tomb for 4 days. That's verse 17. When he arrives in verse 17, he finds the family there mourning. They're still in mourning. And it's important to know that the Bible does not command us to mourn for a certain period of time. There have been lots of different lengths of time that people have been mourned. Jacob's death was mourned first by the Egyptians for 40 days. Then when they got to the river Jordan, Joseph stopped and he mourned for exactly 7 days for his father. And that's what the children of Israel do now. In contemporary Jewish life, there's a season of 7 days called sitting Sheva. And you sit Sheva to the 7, you're sitting these 7 days. You are mourning for 7 days. Like, there's an intentional mourning. I mean, you stop doing other stuff and you focus on the grieving. And it's not for the purpose of conjuring up pain. It's for the purpose of letting your soul go through its pain process. Again, not to stuff, not to pretend it's not there, but to actually go through the pain, to feel that pain, and to honor. In those 7 days, I'm experiencing my pain and I'm honoring who I've lost. And so we see also that they mourn for Moses 30 days, and that's in Deuteronomy 34, verse 8. Jacob's death that I talked about is in Genesis chapter 50. They mourn for him. You see in Deuteronomy 21, where the Lord talks about they take over a town and they want to make a woman their wife out of the people that they took the town over, but her father and mother had died, and the Lord tells them to give her 30 days to mourn. And so at that point, he actually says, commands a length of time. And it's not commanding her to mourn for 40 days. The command was to the new husband, 30 days. Give her 30 days to mourn. Meaning, don't expect anything from her. Leave her alone. Don't even try to connect with her intimately. Let her mourn for 30 days. And again, this is because the Lord knows what's needed in our souls, what we've got to do with regard to releasing that grief, but also honoring the memory. That will allow us to move on in a healthy way. Because once we've grieved and we've honored, again, now we can take a piece of them with us into this next leg of journey. Now, here in John chapter 11, Yeshua he comes on the scene and he starts to comfort Martha, who's there, and then Mary comes and he starts to comfort her too. Now, he could have immediately just stepped out of the way, just called Lazarus up, but he didn't. He loves them. He ministers love to them. He ministers compassion to them. And he even, in verse 35, it says, Yeshua wept. He cried. And a lot of people, speculate as to why did he cry? He knew he was going to raise Lazarus to life. He knew that. No doubt in his mind, that's what he came there to do. I mean, it says it earlier in the other verses. In verse 14, he tells them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And then verse 15, and for your sake, I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. Meaning, I stayed here extra to give him time to die so that we could go there and raise him up. But it was the plan, was to go there and raise him up. That was the plan. What becomes important to note here is that he still wept. And as he is weeping with them, before he raises Lazarus from the dead, he is demonstrating for us the very thing that Paul tells us to do in Romans chapter 12. In Romans chapter 12, 15, I actually want to read Romans 12, 15, and 16 to you, because Paul gives us some insight as to what we are to do. In Romans 12, 15, and 16, he's talking about community, how we are to be as God's people. It reads, rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. In other versions, it says mourn with those who mourn. Verse 16, be sensitive to each other's needs. Don't think yourselves better than others, but make humble people your friends. Don't be conceited. So this is now commandments for a community. When other people are rejoicing, rejoice with them. Don't rain on their parade. Mourning or weeping, mourn with them. Experience the loss with them. Let them know it's precious to you that they're going through something, that it's important to you. And this is what Yeshua is doing here in John chapter 11, verse 35. When he weeps over Lazarus, he's weeping with those who are weeping. And he's ministered to them. He tells them, I am the resurrection and I am the life. And whoever puts to trust in me, he's ministering to their hearts, because he needs to go through this whole process so that when he brings him back to life, they're able to just go into rejoicing that he's back to life. He's dealing with the grief, and he's even grieving with them. He's connecting with them in their grief. As Yeshua did in the earthly body, in his physical body, so the Father does in the spirit to us even now. When we are grieving, he comes and he grieves with us. He weeps with us. It's such a beautiful ministry to us, the way he weeps with us and ministers to us. And because of the gifting that I have, I often see people who passed on, those who died. I often see them, but usually they're in heaven or in the heavenly realm, and I send messages back to their family members. I'll tell them what happened with the loved one. And I remember a young woman, she was the daughter of a friend of mine, and she lost her brother, meaning my friend had lost her son. Now my friend was at a place of peace because she knew he was with the Lord, and she just knew God had it, but her daughter was a wreck. Like, she was having really, really, really hard time. And it's to be expected. Like, it was fine. It's not like it was a bad thing, but she didn't know how to let God come and weep with her. She didn't know how to let God come and minister to her. And so I shared with her a vision that I got in a dream, actually, as I was sleeping. She was standing in a dark, lonely place by herself. Like, she was all alone. And this was really what she was feeling in her soul, because her brother died, that she was all alone. And what I saw were angels come and minister to her. And what they did was they encircled her, and they just kept saying his name, her brother's name. They just kept saying his name, and they were encircling her, saying his name. And it was beautiful the way they were saying it, because his name, it came out of their mouths with such peace. And it's like it was giving peace to her heart. It was ministering peace into her heart in this dream I had. So I shared it with my friend, that she could share it with her daughter. And the important thing about that is that both of them are grieving, but the mother grieved differently than the daughter, because the mother let God come into her grief. She let the Lord in. She let the Lord minister to her, like I was talking to you about with my miscarriage, just letting God come in and minister to me, to speak to me, to minister to my heart. He doesn't come in and tell us, we need to stop crying, we need to suck it up, we need to bear up under it, we need to be thankful that they went to heaven. He's not like that at all. He's so tender when he ministers to us, because again, our pain is precious to him. That's why I read Psalm 56:8 at the beginning, that we would know, like David knew, that our pain is precious to God. He does not want us to experience pain. That's why in Revelation chapter 21, he's going to wipe every tear from our eyes. That's why he's waiting. Oh, he's excited about that day, He doesn't want us to feel 1 ounce of pain. But when we do, because we still live in linear time on this sin-sick earth, he wants to sit shiver with us. He wants to be right there with us, catching every tear and ministering to our hearts and even weeping with us, as we see Yeshua doing in John 11:35. He wants to even be right there with us, weeping with us. And now what we saw in Romans chapter 12, verses 15 and 16, is that Yeshua sets us a model. Paul gives us a command. We are also to do the same for each other. When our brothers and sisters are hurting, we are to comfort them, but in such a way that lets them know that their pain is precious to us and that we understand their pain, we feel their pain. We're not to shun their pain. We're not to shut them down. We're to let them express it and minister to their hearts through feeling the pain with them, which is so important, that we feel the pain with them. I'm going to tell you another testimony, and I'll give you a scripture. I had a pastor friend. She's a dear friend of mine, and she was a pastor. And she was at a worship event, and while she was at the worship event, her sister died and her mother died. They both died like right within the same weekend, or range of each other. I remember it all happened like right together, and it was really horrible. The sister died while she was at the worship event, and I think the mother died. The mother had just died, but they both died like right within proximity of each other, and she was very close to both of them, her mother and her sister. And at the sister's funeral, I remember people were telling her to proclaim victory and to continue to go back and to do ministry and to worship God and to praise God. And though they were trying to be encouraging, the spirit behind it was sort of, dust yourself off, get up out of that funk, and go forward in the things of God. And then they came to me and they said, is there a word from the Lord? They knew I was a prophet, and I said, yeah. There's always a word from the Lord. He's always talking. And so I came forward and I said, the word of the Lord is to mourn. She needs to mourn. And everyone's telling her to claim victory and to move forward, but he wants her to stop and mourn, to feel the grief, but to give that grief to him and let him heal her. Now, everybody kept pushing her. They even came to her church and preached in her pulpit that she needed to get over it and move on. And I mean, it was a lot, because that's the mindset of the body of believers. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to read the scripture to you, but we get it wrong. I got to tell you the rest of this testimony. Months later, I'm visiting her at the hospital. And I asked her why was she afraid that she was going to die, because the Lord had put on my heart she's afraid she's going to die. And I said to her, the Lord will do what you want him to do. If you want him to heal you, he'll heal you. And if you want to go home to be with him, he'll take you home to be with him, because this is what he told me to tell her. So now she is actually, she gets sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And she's on her deathbed. So finally, as she's dying, we are praying for her to come back. And I get a vision of her. I actually see her in heaven walking toward the Lord. I'm going to tell everybody I see her. I didn't tell them I saw her in heaven, because we're all hoping she's going to, stay with us. And she didn't. She kept going toward the Lord. And so we're praying, and I told everybody, we need to sing louder, because she could hear us. She could totally hear us praying and singing in her hospital. She could hear us, but she was not turning back around. She was headed toward the Lord, and she greeted her sister and her mother, and she was so happy. And she kept going. And then, of course, she died. Her body on the earth died. Now, this testimony I shared at her funeral. And what becomes important to note about that is that her death was a direct result of the fact that she didn't properly mourn her mother and sister passing right within proximity of each other. I think it was actually 2 months. And the mother passed away in December, and then her sister passed away in February while she was at a conference. And it was devastating. for her, and she really needed to mourn. She needed to stop. She needed to mourn. And I told her that. I did tell her. You can give her a book about grieving. But those in ministry with her wouldn't allow her to do it because they thought she was reveling in depression. As a body of believers, we often don't understand this biblical principle about mourning, how important mourning is. And it's because of this scripture that we misinterpret. We completely misinterpret it. 1 Thessalonians 4:13 and 14. I'll read them to you. And then I'm going to tell you what Paul meant. Now, this is Paul speaking to the believers at Thessalonica. He says, "Now, brothers, we want you to know the truth about those who died. Otherwise, you might become sad the way other people do." And other versions say you might grieve like the rest of mankind. And it says, "You may become sad the way other people do, who have nothing to hope for. For since we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, we also believe that in the same way, God, through Yeshua, will take with him those who have died." Now, what Paul is saying is, we don't grieve like the rest of the world grieves because we know we're going to see those people again because they're with the Lord. And that's true. But he doesn't say we don't grieve at all. He doesn't say we don't mourn and we're not sad at all. He said we're not sad like the world. We don't grieve like the world. And what he means is we don't build those big monuments that I was talking about earlier in our souls, where the rest of our life now is marred by this tragedy, by this death. And we can't move forward because we're stuck at the point of this person's death or this loss in our lives. This is what Paul is talking about. He's not saying don't grieve. He's not saying you ought not be sad. He's not saying you ought to move on immediately. That's not what he's saying. He's saying we have a hope. And honestly, my testimony from last week is so important right here, because that was what helped me to move on, and is helping. That's actually key. It's helping me to move on. Not that it's complete. Is to know that there is a hope. And this is exactly what Paul is talking about. He said the rest of the world becomes sad because they don't have anything to hope for. Their sadness is a lingering sadness that persists, and it puts a damper on the rest of their lives. Have you ever seen someone who's had a broken relationship, maybe a failed marriage or something, and now they cannot have healthy relationships after that because they're so wounded from the previous one? Somebody has died, and so now they don't get close to people anymore because they're so scared they're going to die. That's a monument to that loss. This is what I'm talking about here. They're not able to move on in a healthy way because they did not invite God into their grieving and let him comfort them and weep with them and treasure up their tears. And they didn't honor the person that they could transition their life by taking a piece of that person with them. See, this is the key that we understand about these scriptures. Even when Yeshua tells us to forgive our brothers 70 times 7, he's not saying I automatically go, I forgive you. He means a real forgiveness in our heart. And how can one forgive transgressions or debts if we don't take account of what the transgression of the debts were? We've got to honestly talk to God about those transgressions and debts. Let him minister to our heart, then we're able to release and forgive. But when we blanketly say, oh, I'm not going to be sad like the world, or I'm going to forgive immediately, we are bypassing the truth of what's in our hearts, which is offense in the place of needing to forgive, or loss in this instance of needing to mourn. We've experienced real loss. And the Lord has never told us to go into a place of denial or pretending or making a covenant with a lie like we didn't experience a loss, because we did. We, all of us, if you've lived longer than a year on this earth, you've experienced some type of loss. And it becomes so important that we acknowledge those before God. We don't live there. We don't build monuments and a whole city around that loss. No, we have to let him in, that he can comfort us and minister to us in a season, meaning we're not trying to move forward in that season. When I was mourning for my marriage, and I didn't do it when he first told me to, but when I finally did, I did the things I had to do. I had children, I had ministry, and I did the things I had to do. The stuff that wasn't essential, I cut those things out. And I did what had to be done, and I went home and I mourned some more. And I did the things I had to do, went home, I mourned some more. And I did that for a season. And then when God said, come out, I was able to really come out. I don't have the death of that marriage here in this marriage with me. And now, even after this miscarriage that happened a week ago today, I'm not carrying death with me. I'm carrying hope. Only God can do that. But he can't do it if we don't let him in by acknowledging that we have experienced loss. We have to acknowledge that we've experienced loss and let him in, that he can minister to us, that it was precious not only to us, but also to him. Then he can give us beautiful ways to honor the person we lost, or the season of life, or the relationship that we lost, and then, or the pet that we lost, because we lose pets and other things too. Now we can honor that. And then he will teach us how to transition to the next phase of life, taking a piece of that person or that phase of life or whatever, taking a piece of it with us. That's how we can move forward without bitterness, without regret, without anger, because we can stay in that place of anger, blaming, even God, why'd you let this happen? Because we're not dealing with the grief. You can't be angry at a God who parts heaven, comes down, sits beside you, and cries with you. You can't shake your fist at that God. You can't go, why did you do this? Because he cried too. He's weeping and mourning with you. You can't hate or blame a God who's right there comforting you, ministering to you, and helping you to move on. That one experience right there of God ministering to you, it will remove condemnation and doubt forever. Because people, will become Job's friends. Oh, well, this happened to you. Maybe you weren't praying hard enough, or maybe you weren't doing enough things, or maybe you sinned. You know how Job's friends were. They came and they sat chill with him for a second. As soon as he spoke, then they spoke, and they never stopped. Until God started speaking. They didn't stop speaking until God started speaking. And the Lord rebuked them. But the point is that people will become Job's friends. Unfortunately, especially believers, coming to look for why this tragedy happened in your life, and who, how they can point the finger at you or somebody else in your family as to why the tragedy happened. And the only reason why people do that is because we want to think that tragedies happen to other people because they did something wrong. Because if that's the case, then all I have to do is do all the right things and I'll never experience tragedy. That's the truth. People point fingers at each other just so that they will feel better. And that is not biblical and comes from a really wrong heart. It comes out of a place of fear. They're afraid. If he's going, remember, Job was going through his trials. If Job is going through this, I could certainly go through it, except maybe unless Job deserved it and he did something wrong. Now I'm off the hook. No. That just ministers to our own fears that we could go through it too. And the truth is, we're actually supposed to go through it with the person. We're supposed to feel what they feel, mourn with them when they're mourning. And we can't do that when we're afar off, trying not to feel anything. Pointing fingers at them, hoping we can find a reason why it happened so that we can feel secure in the life that we have. Tragedy and loss hits everybody. There's nobody on this planet that's exempt from it. It's important that we give those losses to God and we let him in so he can minister to us. And then we can honor them, the people, the pets, the seasons that we lost, the relationships we lost. And we can move on, taking a piece of it with us. As we're approaching Memorial Day, let God show you if there's anyone or anything that you still need to mourn, because he wants to heal you. If you're stuck in a year, in a day, and your life has never been the same since that day, you need to mourn. Because it means you've got a monument somewhere. The monument is there because you didn't mourn properly, not the way God wanted you to mourn. We can even have a mourning of a loss of virtue, like if it was a rape or abuse. We can mourn our own virtue being lost. And that's a very real thing. Our innocence being lost, that's real. We can mourn that. And then God will help us to recapture our identity and our purpose. Not forgetting what happened, because honestly, He wants it to be a stepping stone for us to make us stronger. A testimony, like I've been sharing with you today. That's what He wants to use it for. That's how good comes out of bad. This is how all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord and have the called according to His purpose. But only if we give those things to Him. My prayer for you is that you will let Him show you what you need to mourn. Let Him show you where you've experienced real loss. And then invite Him into that place of loss. The day you lost that person, the season when everything changed. Let Him in. He will comfort you. He will even mourn with you. And then He will help you to honor the person or the season you lost, and then walk you into a new season, taking a piece of that person or that season with you so that it's not for nothing. God is able to do it. Will you let Him? That's the question. We're coming up on Memorial Day. Yes, we have cookouts and barbecues and all that, but you got the day off. The banks are closed. If there's someone you should mourn or something you should mourn, let God do it. And again, I invite you to join us this Saturday at 2 p.m. at Temple of Peace, 3115 Wickham Avenue in Newport News, Virginia, because we're going to be healing from loss through this. And if you do join us, bring with you something that reminds you of that person that you lost, that animal, the pet you lost, the season that you experienced loss. Bring a physical thing with you, because we're going to do something with those to help us honor the person or the season or the thing that we lost. And so I pray that you will join us, and even if you don't, let God in. Let Him minister to you. I hope that blessed you. If you'd like more information about our ministry, visit truthinspirit.org and keep coming back to our YouTube channel. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, every time I'm doing live videos, and I do some trainings and things like that live, you'll get notifications and you'll be able to join us. That blessed you, and I hope that you let Him heal you. Till next time, be blessed.